The scanning beam swept across the blue planet for the third time that cycle. Dr. Sylveth pressed her hand against the smooth console, watching the data streams fill her screen with information. So much life. Everywhere she looked, the readings showed creatures moving, hunting, breeding, dying. This world practically screamed with biological activity. "Another one?" Captain Relm asked from behind her. His voice carried that familiar tone of tired patience. They had been cataloging worlds for 6 cycles now, and most of them held nothing but rocks and maybe some simple microbes. "This is different," Sylveth said. She pulled up the atmospheric readings. "Look at the oxygen levels, the temperature variations, the weather systems." She zoomed in on one continent. "This planet is hostile to life, yet life is everywhere." Relm leaned closer. His 3 eyes narrowed as he studied the data. "Those temperature swings would kill most species we know. How does anything survive there? That's what I want to find out." Sylveth switched to the biological scanner. Thousands of red dots appeared on the map, each one representing a life form. "We should collect specimens. Study them in the lab." "Absolutely not." Relm stepped back. "We don't land on death worlds. That's basic protocol." "We don't have to land," Sylveth said quickly. She had expected this resistance. "We use the stasis drones. Remote collection. The specimens never wake up until they're safely in containment." Relm was quiet for a long moment. The ship hummed around them, a comfortable sound that Sylveth barely noticed anymore. Finally he nodded. "Fine, but we take only small specimens. Nothing that could threaten the ship." Sylveth felt excitement bubble in her chest. "I'll start selecting targets immediately." She worked through the night cycle, identifying creatures from different regions of the planet. The inhabitants called it Earth, according to the primitive radio signals they had intercepted. A water world mostly, with large land masses scattered across its surface. The variety was stunning. In the frozen areas, massive white-furred predators hunted seal-like creatures. In the hot zones, scaled reptiles basked in temperatures that would cook most civilized species. But it was the middle regions that fascinated her most. Grasslands stretched for thousands of miles, dotted with herds of plant-eaters and the predators that hunted them. She watched through the ship's telescopes as a pack of spotted carnivores brought down something 3 times their size. The dying creature's struggles lasted only moments. "Efficient," she murmured. She marked several creatures for collection. A serpent with heat-sensing organs, a spined quadruped with defensive quills, a tusked omnivore that appeared to fear nothing, and there, digging near a termite mound, a black and white creature about 1/2 a meter long. She pulled up its scan data. Medium size. Clawed feet probably for digging. Omnivorous diet based on its teeth structure. The computer rated it as threat level 2 out of 10. Minimal danger. Its thick skin showed some resistance to cutting, but nothing unusual. No venom. No obvious weapons. Perfect for baseline studies, Sylveth said to herself. She tagged it for collection and moved on to other specimens. The drones launched just before dawn on the planet below. Sylveth watched from the observation deck as 12 small craft descended through the atmosphere. They were silent, invisible to the primitive detection methods the planet's dominant species might possess. Each drone had a single purpose: locate the target, activate the stasis field, transport the specimen back to the ship. The operation took less than an hour. One by one, the drones returned, each carrying a motionless creature suspended in blue light. Tech specialist Bryn met them in the cargo bay, directing each specimen to its designated containment cell in Research Lab Gamma. Sylveth walked among the cells, studying her new subjects. The serpent lay coiled in a temperature-controlled environment. The tusked omnivore hung suspended, its fierce expression frozen in time. And there, in Cell 7, the black and white creature from the grasslands. She consulted her datapad. The planet's dominant species had a name for it. Honey badger. Strange name. She read further. Apparently it ate honey from insect colonies. It also ate small mammals, reptiles, birds, eggs, roots, and fruit. Quite the diverse diet. The entry mentioned something about aggressive behavior, but the scan data clearly showed it as low threat. When do we begin the awakening sequence? Junior researcher Faust appeared at her shoulder, his young face eager. Tomorrow cycle, Sylveth said. I want to review all the protocols first. Make sure the containment systems are functioning perfectly. Which one should we wake first? Sylveth considered. The serpent would be interesting, but its venom posed risks. The tusked omnivore looked dangerous despite its scan rating. Her eyes returned to Cell 7. We'll start with the less threatening specimens. Work our way up. The honey badger should provide good baseline data about mammalian responses to captivity. Faust nodded enthusiastically. It's so small. Almost cute, really, Sylvith smiled. After 6 cycles of scanning dead rocks and empty worlds, it felt good to have real work again. Real science. These creatures had evolved on one of the most hostile planets they had ever encountered. Studying them would reveal so much about adaptation and survival. She placed her hand on the transparent barrier of Cell 7. The honey badger floated peacefully in stasis, its small clawed feet curled against its body. According to the scanner, those claws were designed for digging dirt. Harmless, really. The thick skin was just an adaptation to its rough environment. The powerful jaws were for crushing insects and small prey. Tomorrow we'll learn all your secrets, Sylvith said softly to the frozen creature. Don't worry. We'll be very careful with you. You're safe here. Behind her, Faust was already preparing the awakening chamber, humming cheerfully as he worked. The other specimens floated in their cells, motionless and silent. Research Lab Gamma gleamed white and sterile under the bright lights. Every surface clean, every system tested and ready. Sylvith took one last look at the honey badger before heading to her quarters for rest. Such a small thing. Such a harmless-looking creature. She wondered what evolutionary pressures had shaped it. What dangers it faced on that violent world below. Tomorrow she would find out. Tomorrow, science would unlock another mystery of the universe. She had no doubt the containment systems could handle whatever this little Earth mammal might do. After all, the scanners said it was no threat. The blue light of the stasis field flickered once, then died. Inside Cell 7, the honey badger's body settled onto the smooth floor with barely a sound. For several seconds, nothing happened. The creature lay completely still, its dark fur rising and falling with shallow breaths. Dr. Sylvith leaned forward, recording every detail on her datapad. Around her, the research lab buzzed with quiet activity. 3 other researchers monitored their stations, watching biological readouts and environmental controls. Everything was perfect. The cell's temperature matched the grassland environment where they had found the creature. The air mixture was identical to Earth's atmosphere. Even the lighting mimicked the natural sun cycle of that distant planet. Heart rate increasing, announced Faust from his station. He sounded excited. Brain activity rising. It should wake in approximately 30 seconds. Sylvith nodded. They had already awakened 2 other specimens that morning. The spined quadruped had barely moved, seemingly content in its cell. The serpent had explored its enclosure briefly before coiling in a corner. Both had behaved exactly as predicted. This one should be just as manageable. The honey badger's eyes opened. They were dark, almost black, and they fixed immediately on Sylvith through the transparent barrier. She felt a small chill run down her spine at that stare, so direct, so focused. Most animals took time to orient themselves after stasis. This one seemed alert instantly. Fascinating, she murmured, making notes. No disorientation period. Immediate environmental awareness. The honey badger stood slowly, testing its legs. It shook itself once, a full-body movement that started at its nose and rippled to its short tail. Then it began walking around the cell's perimeter, nose low, investigating every corner. Normal exploration behavior, Faust said. Just like the others. But Sylvith wasn't so sure. There was something different about the way this creature moved. Purpose, intent. The others had wandered randomly. This one was methodical, checking each section of the cell systematically. The honey badger completed its circuit and stopped at the transparent barrier directly in front of Sylvith. It sat back on its haunches and stared at her. Not at the barrier, at her, as if it understood she was the one responsible for its situation. "Hello there, little one," Sylvith said softly, knowing the creature couldn't understand her words. "You're safe. We just want to study you for a while, then we'll return you home." The honey badger tilted its head slightly. Then, without any warning whatsoever, it launched itself at the barrier. The impact shocked everyone in the lab. Sylvith jumped back, her datapad clattering to the floor. The barrier held, of course. It was designed to contain creatures rated up to threat level 8. This was only a level 2. But the violence of the attack, the sudden explosion of movement, caught them all completely off guard. "By the void," Faust whispered. The honey badger didn't retreat. It stood at the barrier, lips pulled back to show strong white teeth. Then it attacked again. Its claws raked across the transparent surface, making a horrible scraping sound. Again and again. Each strike hit the exact same spot. That's not normal, one of the other researchers said. Her name was Pell and her skin had gone pale. Why is it attacking like that? Panic response, Sylvith said, trying to keep her voice steady. She retrieved her datapad from the floor. It's confused, frightened. Once it calms down, it will stop. But the honey badger showed no signs of calming. It threw itself at the barrier repeatedly, claws scrabbling for purchase on the smooth surface. Each impact left thin white scratches. Superficial, Sylvith told herself. The barrier could handle this. Should we increase the barrier strength? Faust asked. Not yet. Sylvith studied the creature carefully. Let's try pacification first. Release sedative gas. Low concentration. Faust's fingers danced across his console. Inside the cell, nearly invisible vents opened. A calming agent, the same one they used on frightened specimens throughout the collective, began flooding the enclosed space. It worked on every known species. Creatures from 100 worlds. It would work on this one too. The honey badger kept attacking. If anything, its assault intensified. The scraping sound grew louder as its claws found the same spot over and over. Increase concentration, Sylvith ordered. This was concerning but not alarming. Some species had higher resistance to sedatives. They just needed to adjust the dosage. More gas flooded the cell, enough to drop a creature twice this size into peaceful sleep. The honey badger's movements should have been slowing. Its attacks should have become sluggish and unfocused. Instead, it seemed completely unaffected. It attacked with the same manic energy, the same precise targeting. Those dark eyes never left Sylvith. Even as it clawed and bit at the barrier, it watched her with what could only be described as pure determination. A tiny sound reached Sylvith's ears, a high-pitched note almost too quiet to hear. She looked closer at the barrier. There, where the honey badger had been focusing all its attention, a hairline crack had appeared. Impossible. The barrier was made from compressed polymer that could withstand projectile impacts. A small mammal's claws shouldn't even scratch it. That's impossible, Faust said, echoing her thoughts. He stared at his readouts. The integrity sensors show 0.03% degradation. How is that possible? The honey badger threw itself against the weakened spot again. The crack grew, branching out like frozen lightning. The scraping sound became a grinding noise as claws found purchase in the tiny gaps. Maximum sedative, Sylvith said. Her hand was shaking. Right now. The cell filled with enough gas to knock out a threat level 6 creature. The honey badger's movements didn't even falter. If anything, it seemed energized by the challenge. Its lips pulled back further, revealing powerful jaws evolved to crack thick bones and tear through tough hide. Pell moved toward the emergency alarm. Dr. Sylvith, we need to call security. Wait, Sylvith said, but her voice lacked conviction. She was watching the crack spread. Watching this small, supposedly harmless creature do something that shouldn't be possible. The honey badger slammed into the barrier again. Again. The grinding sound grew louder. More cracks appeared, spreading from the central point like a web. The creature's dark eyes never wavered. They stayed locked on Sylvith, full of wild intelligence and absolute refusal to accept its situation. Dr. Sylvith, Faust said quietly. His face had lost all color. I think we need to evacuate the lab. A chunk of the barrier fell inward. Just a small piece no bigger than Sylvith's thumb. But through the gap came a sound that froze every researcher in place. A low, rumbling growl that spoke of endless savanna battles and evolutionary wars that had raged for millions of years. The sound of a creature that had never learned the meaning of surrender. The honey badger's claws hooked into the gap and pulled. More pieces fell away. The creature's head pushed through the opening, jaws snapping at the air beyond its prison. Sylvith's hand finally found the alarm button. Red lights began flashing throughout the lab as the emergency signal blasted through the ship. But even as help was being summoned, even as security teams grabbed their weapons and ran toward Research Lab Gamma, she knew with horrible certainty that they had made a terrible mistake. The scanner data had been wrong. So very wrong. Security Chief Torvin heard the alarm while reviewing patrol schedules in his office. Red emergency signals meant biological containment breach. In his 12 years of service, he had responded to exactly 3 such alarms. 2 had been false triggers from sensor malfunctions. 1 had been a small lizard-like creature that had slipped through a feeding port and was recaptured within minutes. He grabbed his stun weapon and signaled his 2 guards. They jogged toward Research Lab Gamma, not running. No need to panic over what was probably another minor incident. The scientist got nervous around specimens. It was understandable. But that's what security was for. They reached the lab entrance just as Dr. Silvith slammed into the door from the inside. She was trying to open it, her hands shaking so badly she couldn't work the controls properly. Her eyes were wide with terror. "Let us in," Torvin said calmly, pressing his access badge to the panel. The door slid open and Silvith practically fell through, gasping for breath. Behind her, Torvin could see the other researchers huddled in a corner. Lab equipment lay scattered across the floor. And there, standing on top of an overturned analysis station, was the smallest threat he had ever been called to handle. A black and white mammal, no bigger than his forearm. It was covered in what looked like defensive spines or thick fur, hard to tell from this distance. As Torvin watched, it picked up a small piece of equipment in its mouth and shook it violently before throwing it across the room. "That's the emergency?" he asked, unable to keep the amusement from his voice. "Doctor, I think you may have overreacted." "It broke through a level 8 barrier," Silvith said between gasps. "The sedatives didn't work. Nothing worked." Torvin looked at the shattered containment cell. Impressive for such a small creature, he had to admit. But now it was loose in a room with nowhere to go, and 3 armed security officers blocking the only exit. "This would be over in seconds. Stand back," he told Silvith. He raised his stun weapon, a sleek device capable of dropping creatures up to threat level 6 with a single shot. The electrical charge would overwhelm the nervous system, causing temporary paralysis. Completely harmless but very effective, he fired. The blue bolt hit the creature square in its side. It should have dropped instantly. Instead, it barely flinched. It turned to face Torvin, and those dark eyes locked onto him with unsettling intelligence. "By the ancients," one of his guards whispered. "Did you miss?" "I hit it directly," Torvin said. He fired again, and again. 3 bolts in quick succession. The creature shook itself after each impact as if shaking off rain. Its thick skin seemed to disperse the electrical charge, spreading it harmlessly across its body. Then it charged. Torvin had fought in the border wars. He had faced pirates and smugglers and once, memorably, a pack of escaped experimental predators. He knew what a threat looked like. This tiny earth mammal moved like every nightmare predator compressed into half a meter of compact fury. It covered the distance between them in heartbeats. It went straight for the nearest guard, a young officer named Brex. Despite the creature's small size, it moved with such speed and purpose that Brex stumbled backward, trying to get his weapon up. Too slow. The honey badger launched itself at his leg and climbed, claws punching through his protective suit like it was made of thin fabric. Brex screamed, not from pain yet, but from the sheer shock of it. His suit was rated to stop most small weapons. The claws shouldn't have penetrated, but they did, and the creature climbed higher, going for his throat. Torvin grabbed it with both hands, trying to pull it off. The fur was coarse and thick. He got a grip and yanked hard. For a moment, the creature came free. Then it twisted in his grip with impossible flexibility and bit down on his hand. The pain was immediate and intense. Those jaws, which looked so small and harmless, clamped down with shocking force. Torvin felt teeth puncture his skin, scraping against bone. He dropped the creature and stumbled back, clutching his injured hand. Blood welled between his fingers. The honey badger landed on its feet and immediately attacked the third guard. It was moving so fast, so aggressively, that organized defense became impossible. The guards fell back, weapons forgotten, just trying to protect themselves from this whirlwind of claws and teeth. Across the lab, the other Earth specimens began reacting to the chaos. The serpent in its cell lifted its head, tasting the air with its tongue. The tusked omnivore pressed against its barrier, snorting. The spined quadruped made a strange huffing sound. The honey badger seemed to notice them. It broke off its attack on the security team and ran toward the control panel that managed the containment cells. Torvin watched in horror as it began biting at the cables, its powerful jaws severing connections with quick, precise movements. "It's trying to free the others," Silvith said from the doorway. She hadn't fled like Torvin expected. She stood frozen, watching her worst fears come true in real time. Warning lights flashed across the lab as containment systems failed. The serpent's cell door slid open. It poured out onto the floor, 3 meters of scaled muscle and venom. The tusked omnivore's barrier flickered and died. The creature charged out immediately, crashing into tables and sending equipment flying. "Evacuate the lab," Torvin ordered. His hand throbbed where the honey badger had bitten him. "Seal the section. We need to contain this before it spreads to the rest of the ship." His guards were already moving toward the exit, backing away from the chaos. The honey badger ignored them now. It had found something more interesting: a ventilation grate in the wall. It attacked the metal covering with the same focused intensity it had shown toward the containment barrier. "It's trying to get into the ship's systems," Sylvith said. Her voice was hollow with dread. "Chief Torvin, if it gets into the ventilation network, we'll never catch it." Torvin activated his communicator. "Bridge, this is Security Chief Torvin. We have a situation in Research Lab Gamma. Multiple specimens loose. Recommend full lockdown of this section." "Understood," came Captain Reln's voice. "What's the threat level?" Torvin watched the honey badger tear another piece of metal from the ventilation grate. He looked at his injured hand, at the guards nursing their wounds, at the serpent exploring the lab's corners and the tusked omnivore, destroying everything in its path, and then at the small black and white creature that had caused all of this. "The scanners rated it as level 2. He said slowly. "The scanners were wrong. I don't know what this thing is, but it's not level 2. It's not anything we've encountered before." The honey badger pulled the last piece of the grate free and peered into the dark ventilation shaft. For just a moment it looked back at the gathered security team. If Torvin didn't know better, he would have sworn the creature was making a decision, calculating its next move. Then it disappeared into the darkness of the ship's infrastructure, and somewhere in the distance, Captain Reln was demanding answers that nobody could provide. The ship's artificial intelligence tracked the creature's progress through the ventilation system, using motion sensors and thermal imaging. On the bridge, Captain Reln watched red dots appear and disappear across the schematic display as the honey badger moved through spaces no conscious being should be able to navigate. "How is it finding its way?" he demanded. The ship was enormous, a maze of corridors and shafts and maintenance tunnels. Even crew members got lost sometimes, yet this animal from a primitive world was moving through it with apparent purpose. "Unknown, Captain." The AI's voice remained calm and analytical. "The creature appears to be following air currents. It may be using scent or temperature gradients to navigate." Dr. Sylvith had made it to the bridge after fleeing the lab. She stood at a secondary console, pulling up every piece of information she could find about Earth and its creatures. What she read made her feel cold inside. "Captain," she said quietly, "I need to show you something." Reln joined her at the console. She had accessed the data archives they had collected from Earth's primitive communication networks, not detailed scientific records, of course. The planet's dominant species was still in early technological development. But they did keep records, stories, videos, things they found important enough to preserve and share. "This creature," Sylvith said, highlighting a video file. "The inhabitants of Earth have documented it extensively." The video showed a honey badger in its natural environment. Sylvith watched the captain's face as the recording played. The creature attacked a porcupine 5 times its size, ignoring the defensive quills that should have stopped any predator. It killed and ate a venomous serpent seeming immune to the poison. It drove away a pride of large feline predators from their kill, showing no fear whatsoever. "That's impossible," Reln said. "A creature that size shouldn't be able to survive those encounters." "Yet it does." Sylvith pulled up more files. "There are hundreds of these videos, thousands of accounts. The Earth inhabitants have a saying about this species." She read from the translated text. "Honey badger don't care. Honey badger don't give a damn. What does that mean?" "It means," Sylvith said slowly, "that this creature doesn't respond to normal threat assessment. It doesn't retreat when it should. It doesn't submit. It simply refuses to accept defeat regardless of the odds against it." Reln stared at the screen, at the small animal that had just torn through his ship's security like they were nothing. "Pull up its original scan data," Sylvith did. The cold clinical numbers appeared. "Threat level 2, minimal danger, standard defensive capabilities. Everything by the numbers, everything according to protocol. Everything completely catastrophically wrong. Our scanners measured physical attributes," she said. "Jaw strength, claw hardness, body mass, venom capacity. All the quantifiable factors we use to rate threats. And we didn't scan for attitude, for determination, for the complete lack of self-preservation instinct that millions of years on a death world can create." She looked at the captain, Sir, Earth isn't just dangerous because of its environment. It's dangerous because it created species that refuse to acknowledge danger, that see every threat as just another obstacle to overcome. An alert flashed on the main display. The honey badger had stopped moving. Its thermal signature showed it was in a junction near the ship's primary life support systems. What's it doing there? Reln asked. Unknown, the AI responded. The creature has been stationary for 37 seconds. This is its longest pause since entering the ventilation system. Medical Officer Dresch arrived on the bridge carrying a data pad. She looked exhausted and worried. Captain, I need to report on the injured security personnel. How bad? Not life-threatening, but concerning. The bite wounds show remarkable jaw pressure. Chief Torvin has deep punctures that required surgical intervention. The claw wounds on the guards penetrated our standard protective suits. These shouldn't be possible from a creature this small. Reln gestured at Sylvith's research. Apparently possible is relative when dealing with Earth species. Dresch glanced at the screen and went pale. That's what attacked the security team? It's so small. Size means nothing, Sylvith said. She had found more information, and each new piece made the situation look worse. Earth is what we classify as an extreme death world. Nearly every species there has evolved to be either highly aggressive or extremely durable, often both. The honey badger is both. Its skin is so thick and loose that predators can't get a good grip. It's resistant to venom from multiple earth serpents. It can survive injuries that would kill most species our size. Why would evolution create something like that? Dresch asked. Because on Earth, if you're not willing to fight for survival, you don't survive. Sylvith pulled up an image of Earth. That beautiful blue marble covered in swirling white clouds. This planet has ice ages and volcanic eruptions and massive storms. Its creatures compete for every resource. They're all in an endless war for survival. The honey badger survived that war by becoming completely utterly fearless, another alert. The honey badger was moving again, but now it was heading up. Toward the upper decks. Toward the bridge. Can we seal the sections? Reln asked. Already done, Captain, the AI said. All bulkheads between the creature's location and critical systems are now closed and locked. They waited. The red dot on the display moved steadily upward, testing different routes, finding the sealed doors and trying to work around them. It was learning the ship's layout. Adapting its approach. Suggestions? Reln said to anyone listening, we could try luring it with food, offered the pilot Nim from her station. Sylvith shook her head. Look at what it eats in the wild. It takes food from predators. It raids insect colonies protected by thousands of stinging defenders. It doesn't respond to easy meals. It responds to challenges. Then we make its escape route the easy path, Reln said. He turned to the AI. Plot a clear route from the creature's current location back to the specimen bay. Open all doors along that route. Close all other options. Captain, if we guide it back to the bay, we still have to recapture it. The containment system's already failed once. Then we don't recapture it. We send it home. Silence fell across the bridge. Sylvith broke it first. You want to return to Earth? Release the specimens? I want this creature off my ship, Reln said bluntly. Look at what it's done. It broke through our barriers. Ignored our sedatives. Injured trained security personnel. It's currently loose in our life support systems and we have no reliable way to stop it. Yes, Doctor, I want to return it. Before it decides to start attacking something critical. The other specimens will also be returned, all of them. Reln made the decision with visible relief. This entire collection operation is terminated. Whatever secrets Earth might hold, they're not worth the risk. On the display, the honey badger found a new ventilation shaft, one that led directly to the bridge's auxiliary air intake. The filters should stop it. They were designed to prevent anything from entering the bridge through the ventilation system, but then the barriers had been designed to hold it too. And the sedatives were supposed to work. And the security team should have been able to handle one small mammal. Reln watched the red dot draw closer and made a ship-wide announcement. All personnel, this is the captain. We are returning to the third planet of this system. All specimens will be released. This is not a failure of protocol. This is an acknowledgement that some things are not meant to be studied. Bridge out. The red dot stopped moving. Then slowly it began heading in a different direction. Back down, away from the bridge, almost as if it understood it had won. Pilot Nim guided the ship through Earth's upper atmosphere with careful precision. Below them, the planet's landmasses appeared through breaks in the cloud cover. So much blue, So much life-sustaining water. The sensors showed millions of creatures moving across those continents, each one fighting its own daily battle for survival. In the cargo bay, engineers worked quickly to construct temporary holding environments for the Earth specimens. They couldn't risk using the containment cells again. Instead, they built what amounted to large crates with heavy mesh walls and multiple redundant locks. Nothing sophisticated, just sturdy barriers between the creatures and the crew. Dr. Silvith supervised the work, though her heart wasn't in it. She should have been excited about returning these specimens to their natural habitat. Instead, she felt hollow. All that potential knowledge gone. All those questions about Earth's evolution unanswered, because they had underestimated one small animal. The honey badger sat in its makeshift crate, watching her through the mesh. It wasn't attacking anymore, wasn't trying to escape. It simply sat there, alert and waiting, as if it knew something the crew didn't. "Do you think it understands what's happening?" Faust asked. He was helping monitor the environmental controls, making sure each specimen had appropriate temperature and oxygen levels. "I don't know," Silvith admitted. "Earth animals aren't supposed to be that intelligent. But nothing about this creature has matched our expectations." The other specimens seemed calmer in their new enclosures. The serpent coiled peacefully. The tusked omnivore had settled down after being given some vegetation to eat. Even the spined quadruped appeared content. Only the honey badger remained vigilant, its dark eyes tracking every movement around it. "Approaching release zone," Nim announced over the ship's communication system. "All personnel prepare for atmospheric landing." The ship shuddered slightly as it dropped through the thickening air. They were returning to the same region where they had collected the specimens. The African grasslands, the scanners called it. A hot, dry environment full of predators and prey locked in their eternal dance of death and survival. Captain Relm entered the cargo bay, accompanied by Security Chief Torvin. The chief's hand was wrapped in medical bandaging and he moved stiffly. The honey badger had done more damage than anyone wanted to admit. "Doctor," Relm said, "I want you to understand something. This isn't a failure. This is wisdom. Knowing when to step back, I understand, Captain." Silvith did, truly. But understanding didn't make it easier to accept. "For what it's worth, I've compiled a comprehensive report for the collective. Recommendations for future contact with Earth, which are, don't, at least not until we understand what we're dealing with." She gestured at the crates around them. "These are just animals, Captain. Not even the dominant species, and look what they did to us. Imagine what the Earth's intelligent inhabitants might be capable of." Relm nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about that. The dominant species evolved alongside these creatures, competed with them for resources, survived the same harsh environment." He looked at the honey badger. "If that little monster is what shared their world, what does that tell us about humans?" The ship touched down with barely a vibration. Nim was an excellent pilot. Through the cargo bay's small windows, Silvith could see yellow grassland stretching to the horizon. Heat waves shimmered in the distance. Several large animals moved near a water source, too far away to identify clearly. "Prepare for release," Relm ordered. "Remote deployment. I want drones handling this, not crew members." The drones were already prepared, having been reprogrammed during the return journey. They would lift each crate, carry it outside the ship, and open it remotely. Safe, efficient, no risk to the crew. The serpent went first. The drone lifted its crate gently and carried it 100 meters from the ship before setting it down. The mesh wall fell away and the serpent slithered out cautiously. It tasted the air, recognized its home, and disappeared into the tall grass within seconds. The tusked omnivore charged out the moment its crate opened, snorting and kicking up dust. It trotted away toward a distant tree line, already searching for familiar territory. The spined quadruped emerged slowly, testing the ground with each step. It looked around, spotted something in the distance, and began walking toward it with clear purpose. One by one, the Earth creatures returned to their world. They didn't look back. They simply resumed their lives as if the strange experience aboard an alien ship had been nothing more than a brief, confusing interruption. The honey badger's crate was last. The drone lifted it carefully, perhaps more carefully than necessary given what was inside. It carried the crate to a spot near a rocky outcropping, a place that looked similar to where they had first found the creature. Through the cargo bay windows, the entire crew watched. They couldn't help themselves. This small animal had changed everything, had rewritten their understanding of threat assessment and survival instincts. They needed to see how this story ended. The mesh wall dropped away. For several seconds, the honey badger didn't move. It sat in the open crate studying its surroundings, testing the air with its nose. Its eyes scanned the grassland, the rocks, the distant waterhole. Home. This was home. Then it stood and walked out. Not quickly, not frantically. It simply walked out as if this had always been the plan, as if it had known all along that it would return here. 20 meters from the crate, it stopped and turned. It looked directly at the ship, at the windows where the crew stood watching. Sylvith felt her breath catch. Those dark eyes, full of wild intelligence, seemed to see right through the advanced alloys and energy shields. Seemed to understand exactly what had happened and why. The honey badger held that stare for a long moment. Then it turned away and trotted off toward the rocks, its distinctive rolling gait carrying it back into its world of constant danger and endless survival. "Systems check," Reln said quietly. "Prepare for departure." The ship's engines hummed to life. The landing struts retracted. Slowly, the vessel lifted from the surface, leaving no trace of its presence except some compressed grass that would spring back within hours. As they climbed through the atmosphere, Sylvith pulled up the report she had been preparing. Hours of work, documenting everything they had learned. She read through the final recommendation one more time before transmitting it to the collective's central database. Earth should be classified as restricted access, extreme caution level. All species demonstrate survival characteristics far beyond standard threat assessment parameters. The dominant intelligent species, humans, should be considered potentially dangerous until proper diplomatic protocols can be established. They evolved alongside some of the most relentless predators and competitors in known space. They survived on a world that actively tries to kill its inhabitants. They became the apex species on a planet where that honey badger is considered mid-level threat. Recommend no direct contact until we better understand what kind of civilization such an environment would produce. She attached all her data, all her observations, and sent the report. Somewhere analysts would read it. Committees would debate it. Decisions would be made about Earth's future in the greater galaxy. But Sylvith suspected the decision had already been made. By a small black and white creature that had torn through their best technology, with nothing but determination and claws designed for digging dirt. 3 cycles later, the Infinite Inquiry floated in deep space far from any star system. The crew had returned to their normal routines, cataloging distant worlds and analyzing data from safer specimens collected from gentler planets. But the incident with Earth remained fresh in everyone's mind, particularly on the bridge where Captain Reln had ordered the creation of a new threat assessment protocol. "It's not enough to measure physical attributes," he said during a meeting with his senior staff. "We need to consider behavioral factors, aggression levels, survival instincts, the willingness to fight when retreat would be logical." Dr. Sylvith nodded. She had been working on exactly such a system since they left Earth. "I've compiled data on death worlds throughout known space. There's a pattern. The harsher the environment, the more determined the survivors become. Earth isn't unique in its hostility, but it may be unique in how many different deadly environments it contains. Ice and desert and jungle and ocean, all on one world. Species there don't specialize. They adapt. And humans?" asked Reln. "What about them?" Sylvith pulled up an image on the main display, a human face captured from one of their orbital scans, young male with dark skin and bright eyes. He had been working in a field, planting crops in soil that would have killed most civilized species from chemical exposure alone. He had looked up at one point, perhaps sensing the ship's presence, though that should have been impossible. The image had frozen on his face on that moment of awareness. "Humans are the ultimate product of Earth's evolutionary pressure," Sylvith said. "They're not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most venomous or the best armored, but they're adaptable. They spread to every environment on their planet. They survived ice ages and droughts and volcanic winters. They competed with creatures like that honey badger for millions of years and won." "How?" asked Faust. He had been quieter since the incident, less eager, more thoughtful. "Tools. Cooperation. Intelligence. And apparently, the same stubborn refusal to give up that the honey badger demonstrated." Sylvith switched to a video file, one of many they had collected from Earth's communication networks. It showed a human climbing a sheer rock face hundreds of meters above the ground, with nothing but their hands and some basic equipment. Look at this. They deliberately put themselves in danger. They climb mountains. They dive into deep water. They run toward threats instead of away from them. That's insane, said Medical Officer Dresch. That's human, Sylvith replied. They have a saying, translated from one of their languages, because it's there. They explore and challenge themselves not because they need to, but because something in their nature demands it. Captain Realm leaned back in his chair. Through the bridge windows, stars stretched in all directions. Countless worlds waiting to be discovered. Somewhere among them might be other species like humans, other Death World survivors who refuse to acknowledge their own limitations. I've made my decision, he said. Earth is off limits. No more collection missions, no more orbital surveys. We log its location, we note its threat level, and we move on. If humans ever develop space travel and find us, we deal with them then. But we don't go looking for them. The collective may disagree, Sylvith pointed out. There's valuable scientific data on that world. Then the collective can send their own ships. Let them learn what we learned. Relin touched his console, bringing up the mission log. I'm filing an official report, recommending Earth be classified as extreme danger. Not worth contact. I'm including all our data, all our recordings. The honey badger footage alone should convince anyone with sense to stay away. Junior researcher Faust spoke up hesitantly. Captain, I have a question. If the honey badger was that dangerous and it's not even the top predator on Earth, what about the actual apex predators? What about humans? Everyone in the room considered that. The honey badger had been classified as threat level 2, mid-range danger, not even close to the most dangerous creatures on Earth. The scans had shown larger predators, more aggressive species, more obviously deadly animals, and humans had not just survived alongside all of them, they had thrived. I don't want to know, Reln said finally. I really genuinely don't want to know what humans are capable of. The honey badger taught us enough. Sylvith saved her research files and closed her datapad. I keep thinking about something, she said. The honey badger never gave up, not once. It fought the barrier until it broke. It ignored the sedatives. It attacked trained security personnel. It escaped into our ship's systems. And it did all of that while probably terrified and confused. Your point? Relin asked. My point is, it wasn't trying to hurt us. Not really. It was trying to survive, to escape. Every action had a purpose. Breaking free, finding a way out. It was solving problems, Captain. That tiny Earth mammal was solving problems in an alien environment it had never seen before, using nothing but instinct and determination. And humans are better at problem solving than honey badgers, Dresch said quietly. Much better, Sylvith confirmed. They build cities. They create technology. They cooperate in groups of millions. They plan for the future. They learn from the past. Now imagine all of that combined with the honey badger's refusal to quit, with that same survival instinct honed over millions of years on a death world. Silence filled the bridge. Outside, the universe continued its slow dance, uncaring about the fears of one small ship's crew. Somewhere on that blue planet, humans were living their lives unaware that they had been visited and studied and ultimately feared by an advanced alien civilization. Navigation, Reln said. Set course for the Peller system. I want to be at least 50 light-years from Earth before we resume normal operations. 50 light-years, Captain? The navigator sounded surprised. That's excessive for a single world. You didn't see what I saw. You didn't watch a creature smaller than your arm break through technology designed to hold things 10 times its size. You didn't see it shrug off enough sedative to drop a threat level 6. And you didn't look into its eyes and see that it understood exactly what was happening. Rellen's voice was firm. 50 light-years, minimum. The ship's engines engaged, pushing them away from that dangerous blue world. Dr. Sylvith took one last look at Earth on her screen. Beautiful. Deadly. Home to the honey badger and countless other survivors. Home to humans. She thought about the young man in the field, the one who had looked up at their ship. Had he seen them? Had he wondered about the strange light in the sky? Would he tell others about it? Probably not, she decided. On a world like Earth, strange things were probably common. A brief light in the sky would be forgotten quickly, dismissed as unimportant compared to the daily struggle of survival. But someday, Humans would look up at the stars with more than curiosity. They would build ships. They would explore. They would bring that same stubborn determination that carried them through ice ages and volcanic winters and competition with honey badgers. They would spread through the galaxy, solving problems, refusing to quit, adapting to every challenge, and when that day came, the galaxy would learn what the crew of the Infinite Inquiry had learned, that the most dangerous threats don't always look dangerous. Sometimes they look small, sometimes they look harmless, sometimes they even look cute. But appearances mean nothing when you're dealing with survivors from a death world, when you're facing species that evolved in a crucible of constant danger, when you're meeting creatures that simply don't understand the concept of giving up. "Captain," Sylvith said as Earth disappeared from her screen, "I have one more recommendation for my report." "Go ahead." "If humanity ever reaches the stars, don't fight them. Don't try to contain them. Don't underestimate them because they look soft or weak or manageable." She thought of the honey badger, sitting calmly in its crate, waiting patiently for the right moment. Because they won't quit. Ever. That's not how Death World species work. That's not what Earth teaches its children. "Noted," Reln said, "though I hope we never have to test that theory." "So do I, Captain. So do I." The ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving the Sol system behind. In the cargo bay, technicians were still repairing the damage from one small Earth mammal's brief visit. In the medical wing, Security Chief Torvin was recovering from bite wounds that shouldn't have been possible. In the research lab, a shattered containment cell stood as a monument to the dangers of assumption. And on Earth, in the African grasslands, a honey badger emerged from its burrow to face another day of survival. It had no memory of the strange place it had briefly visited, the alien ship that had taken it from its home. Such things didn't matter. What mattered was finding food, avoiding the big predators, fighting the small ones, surviving another day in a world that never stopped testing you. The honey badger trotted off across the savannah, fearless and determined, just as evolution had designed it, just as Earth had made it. A perfect example of what happened when life refused to give up. No matter how bad the odds, no matter how big the threat. Somewhere above, in the vast darkness of space, aliens who had learned that lesson the hard way were running. And they were right to run, because someday Earth's children would follow them to the stars. And when they did, the galaxy would learn what the honey badger had already taught. Threat levels don't mean everything. Sometimes attitude matters more than size. Sometimes determination beats technology. Sometimes the scariest thing in the universe is something small that simply refuses to quit.